Hey everyone! Today we're talking about someone really famous from ancient times, Nebuchadnezzar II. He was one of the most powerful kings of the ancient Near East, and people remember him in lots of different ways. Some see him as a brilliant builder who created amazing cities, while others see him as a destructive conqueror. Now let's learn more about his story. Nebuchadnezzar II's name comes up a lot in old texts. He's mentioned in Jewish scriptures, rabbinic commentaries, books like the Pseudepigrapha and Apocrypha, Arabic writings, and even by Greek and Latin authors from long ago. Some of these sources describe him as almost godlike, and a genius at building cities. But others, especially Jewish writings, see him as the bad guy who destroyed cities and nations. You've probably heard his name as Nebuchadnezzar, but the more accurate version is Nebuchadnezzar, based on how it's written in ancient Babylonian and Hebrew. His name means Nabu protects the sun, or boundary. Nabu was a god in Mesopotamia, and the son of their main god, Marduk. The name also connects to Nebuchadnezzar's father, Nabopolassar. Interestingly, there were other important Babylonians with similar names, including Nebuchadnezzar I, who ruled hundreds of years earlier. This shows how much weight the name carried in their culture. It's not easy to piece together Nebuchadnezzar's life because the sources we have are incomplete. Archaeologists have found some solid evidence about his reign, but a written record called the Babylonian Chronicles has a 30-year gap when talking about him. Jewish scriptures and later historians like Josephus fill in some of the blanks, but they were written long after Nebuchadnezzar's time. To understand how Nebuchadnezzar became so powerful, we need to talk about the Neo-Babylonian Empire. This empire replaced the Assyrian Empire in 612 BCE, thanks to his father, Nabopolassar. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was made up of different groups of people, including the Chaldeans from southern Mesopotamia, which was likely Nebuchadnezzar's family background. Nebuchadnezzar married a princess from the Median Empire, which helped form an alliance with powerful neighbors like the Medes and Persians. This allowed Babylon to focus on expanding its control to the west. Nebuchadnezzar started leading military campaigns when he was still young. He went with his father on campaigns and was part of the Battle of Carchemish around 608 to 607 BCE. This city was on the Euphrates River and was controlled by the Egyptians. When his father had to return to Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar stayed and defeated the Egyptian army led by Pharaoh Necho. This victory gave Babylon control over areas like Syria, Phoenicia, and Judah. But when his father passed away, Nebuchadnezzar had to rush back to Babylon to secure the throne. Once he became king, he continued winning battles and forcing cities in the Levant to pay tribute by 601 BCE. The Jewish Bible is especially important for understanding what Nebuchadnezzar did next. Judah, a small kingdom under Babylon's control, decided to rebel. They thought Egypt would help them, but they were wrong. In 587 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar responded by surrounding Jerusalem and starting a siege. On July 30th of that year, the city fell. The king of Judah and his family were captured, and most of the people were taken to Babylon, leaving only the poorest behind. The Babylonians also took treasures from the temple and other cultural artifacts back to their city. For the people of biblical Israel, this was a defining moment. The destruction of the temple, the exile of their leaders, and the loss of their homeland became central themes in their identity and history. Nebuchadnezzar's actions during this period are remembered vividly in their scriptures, where he is often seen as a symbol of destruction and exile. And compared to the Assyrians, who were known for being incredibly harsh, Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian policies were actually more lenient. Unlike the Assyrians, who often destroyed entire cultures and ways of life, Nebuchadnezzar left enough of people's social and religious structures intact that 50 years later, the exiled people of Judah were able to return home and rebuild their nation. Even the prophet Jeremiah, a key figure in Jewish scripture, advised his people to cooperate with Nebuchadnezzar's rule, showing a kind of reluctant respect for his authority. However, the destruction of Jerusalem and the loss of their temple and land left a lasting scar on the people of Judah. In their writings, Nebuchadnezzar was often portrayed as a cruel and arrogant figure, a villain who brought immense suffering. This harsh view of him reflected the deep pain caused by those events. As for Nebuchadnezzar's later years, much of what we know comes from inscriptions, archaeological discoveries, and accounts written long after his time. By then, he seemed to shift his focus from military conquest to building and improving his empire. Although he tried several times, he was never able to fully conquer Egypt or keep control there for long. Instead, he poured his energy into making Babylon a magnificent city and strengthening his empire. Under Nebuchadnezzar, the Neo-Babylonian Empire reached its peak of power and wealth. He undertook huge construction projects across the empire, working on at least a dozen cities. But his greatest achievement was the transformation of Babylon itself. Archaeologists have found evidence that Babylon was surrounded by 5 layers of walls, with towers placed strategically to defend the city. There was even a wide moat around it for extra protection. Nebuchadnezzar didn't settle for living in his father's old palace. He built an even grander one for himself, using luxurious materials like gold, silver, lapis lazuli, ivory, and cedar. He also restored the city's main temple, which was dedicated to the Babylonian god Marduk. The temple featured a massive ziggurat, a step tower that some people believe inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Because of these accomplishments, later historians, especially the Greeks, admired Nebuchadnezzar. They even credited him with creating the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. While archaeologists haven't found solid evidence of the gardens, the stories about them add to Nebuchadnezzar's reputation as a visionary builder and planner. Despite his achievements, the greatness of Nebuchadnezzar's empire didn't last long after his death. His successors lacked his leadership skills, or maybe the empire's resources were simply stretched too thin. Whatever the reason, the Neo-Babylonian Empire eventually fell to the Medes and Persians. In the biblical books of Daniel and Judith, Nebuchadnezzar is described as a smart and sophisticated man, but also one with a massive ego. These stories say that his arrogance led to madness later in his life. Some versions even suggest that he began to respect the God of Israel before he died. But by then, it was too late to save the empire he had worked so hard to build. And that's it for the interesting story of Nebuchadnezzar. If you enjoyed learning about this powerful and controversial ruler, make sure to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.